Welcome back to NextGen Marin's podcast Priced Out, where we discuss and explore some of the biggest issues facing Marin County. This week we are joined by Rachel Ginis of LillyPad Homes, discussing how ADUs and JDUs can help solve the housing crisis. You can find more of our podcasts on our website at nextgenmarin.com. So, Rachel, thank you for coming in today.
My pleasure.
So we always start off every podcast looking at, your background, what brought you into the certain space. Do you want to touch upon that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think everybody is in the housing space, right? I mean, housing is fundamental. It's fundamental to health. It's fundamental to democracy. It's fundamental to economics. It's just fundamental. And I would say it's underlying all those things. I mean, to go out there and have access to healthcare and knowledge and work and everything. I mean, you need a stepping off place for all of those. So I feel like
everybody needs shelter.
Right. It is absolutely fundamental to everything. And anyway, but I'm very diverse on this subject. So because I studied housing patterns as a student of anthropology in college, and so I studied the housing history globally, and I recognized that we had a housing anomaly in the United States that not that many people know about. You kind of take for granted the environment that you live in. But the fact of the matter is that we have a very specific housing stock in this country, and it's very much focused on the nuclear family. And that was an anomaly that kind of came out of World War II, when there was a focus on the mobile nuclear family that was going to facilitate the industrial age.
The nuclear family meaning more people living in the same house?
No, Matt, good question. No, actually, it means a mom, a dad, and a couple of kids. So a multi-generational family would be the alternative to that, and that's when you obviously have multiple generations of families living in the same home. So your grandmother or your aunt and kids coming back
like
and
they
raising
do in
their
Italy
kids.
In Mexico.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. It is the common housing pattern around the world, and it has been throughout the ages. So, but after World War II, there was a particular focus on this mobile nuclear family, and with the introduction of the GI Bill, the vast majority of housing in this country was created with the nuclear family in mind. And there was also this assumption that we had endless cheap energy. And if you look at the footprint of the United States, you see those two assumptions in the archaeological record, right? All those ticky-tacky houses, right, broken into little rooms to house everybody individually. And so, well, the fact of the matter is that we are moving back to a multi-generational housing model. That was the common housing model in this country prior to World War II. And continues to be, the common housing practice around the world. But there's a 21st century overlay, and that is unrelated groups of people are pooling their resources to share housing, so to purchase housing or to stay in housing.
Right. And the question is that a result of what people want, or a shortage of housing, or just out of necessity?
I would say it's all those things. It's a combination of those things. The demographics of our society is changing. So a mom, dad, and even one kid under the age of 18 makes up only 33% of the population in California.
It's that low.
It's that low,
wow.
Yes. And so you fill in the blank. So it's single-parent families, small families, right, one kid, couples without kids, and individuals of all ages, and young professionals like yourselves, right? And I'm just going to take a moment to say I'm thrilled to see a group of young people, young professionals coming to the table having this conversation. It's so important. You guys, you have an unbelievable opportunity to use your voices. They have a lot of power. You have a life of voting ahead of you, and housing our children, is just so important. And having the opportunity to have your children come home and live in the community where they grew up. It's like, I think Marin is an amazing place, but if we can't have our children come home, and if we can't house our seniors, then we live in a gilded cage, and all of this beauty and abundance goes to waste.
What's the point of saving it if no one can live here?
What's the point? Yeah. And just having that opportunity, given the economic engine that the Bay Area is. I mean, this is just absolutely fundamental to everything. Anyway, so my background, it's, again, so I had the anthropology under my belt in college, which, I just have always had a fascination and interest in housing. But I'm also a designer and a LEED accredited designer, which means I'm very interested in sustainability, sustainable methodologies and technologies. But I'm also a licensed general contractor in California. And so I had that under my belt when I came into, my own housing challenges. And that was when I became a single mom. And I owned a home in Marin, and I was a designer, so needed to hold on to that home on a designer's salary. And I was like, okay, there's 2 of us and 3 bedrooms, right? And, I could have taken on a roommate, right? We're all allowed to have roommates. But I had a 5-year-old daughter at the time, and I needed to ensure our security and our privacy. And so I took the master bedroom. And I had all the skills necessary to turn that into a wonderful little flexible apartment, in-law apartment. And the income from that apartment allowed me to stay in my home and keep my daughter in her school right down the street from her dad's house, which was fantastic. And then fast forward, my daughter goes off to college, and I got to move into that 220 square foot apartment, which was just a fantastic time of my life. It was amazing. The economic
220 square feet.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was great. I mean, I really like small spaces, and I love the outdoors, and we live in California, so like outdoors is a room. Right. and so that gave me the economic freedom to start a nonprofit, to go out there and empower other people to create these apartments, accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, to give them the economic freedom or empowerment they needed to, remain living comfortably in Marin. And I was looking not only at women, because when I came upon this hardship, I was like, okay, well, this is me. Like, I was thinking about all the women who were ahead of me and all the, people who were older than me moving into retirement. And I certainly thought about young people as well. And I was like, we need to open doors for young people to be able to rent and purchase homes. And one of the things that came out of my work is this opportunity for people to purchase homes based on the income from these units. So opening doors to homeownership is very important to me. I think it's very important on a number of levels. And so anyway, so that's kind of, the whole story. So I'm kind of engaged in this issue on every level. And then, believe it or not, there's something about me. I always seem to be on the front line of housing. I actually sold my house finally in Marin, moved to Sonoma, and then promptly had to run from my house because there was a massive fire that claimed most of my neighborhood, luckily not my home. And so again, having these flexible in-law apartments or ADUs in your home, like, what a great source for emergency housing. And what was it? I think it was, well, we lost over 5,000 homes in Sonoma, but it was like thousands and thousands of people opened the doors to temporarily house other people. And that's like kind of one of the wonderful things, one of the many wonderful things about just having access to additional housing on your property if it's needed. It just addresses so many, opportunities and issues. So,
and you mentioned ADUs and JDUs. For our viewers that don't know the difference or even what they are, can you elaborate a little bit about what ADUs and JDUs are for people who don't know?
Yeah, sure. They're subtly different. So ADUs are complete independent living spaces. They offer all of the provisions needed for sleeping, sanitation, eating, food preparation, and living. And so junior units, it's always tricky because people say ADUs and JADUs, and it's just so it's so confusing. So I call them ADUs or junior units. So junior units are flexible in-law apartments. They do not have full kitchens. They have efficiency kitchens. I think of it as a European kitchen. And they're flexible in that the interior connection to the main living area remains. It can be doubled up for additional sound attenuation and security.
Just another room in the house.
It's and they share central systems. So this cuts brings down the cost of creating these units considerably. And the fact of the matter is you're not redefining the single family home by creating one. You have the opportunity to have this little apartment, independent apartment in your home if you need it. But just, open that door and voila, you have a lovely bedroom that has a little wet bar in it, and all the cooking equipment is like plug-in equipment for these things. So you have a wet bar, right? It has a sink with a small drain, maybe an under-counter refrigerator, then a series of plug-in appliances, right? And, we live in the 21st century, so there's pretty snappy plug-in appliances out there.
What about bathrooms?
Right.
Is it shared with the other residents, or?
Great question. So you can either share a bathroom. We don't get as many requests for that. Most people, if they can build in the privacy, they want it. But you have the opportunity to share a bathroom. And what it does is it actually creates, because of the work that's been done on junior units and ADUs, it creates a continuum of housing. Like we have all of our housing options now. It's really quite wonderful. Junior units kind of blur the line between a roommate and a tenant, right? You can build in that privacy, but sure, you could have back and forth if you desire. And then ADUs, you have complete independent living spaces. And because you can now create a junior unit and an ADU on the same property in many jurisdictions, every single family home can be home to one household, two households, or three households, and then you move into multifamily. So we really have this wonderful array of housing options, but now we just have to build them. Now we just have to figure out the financing, right? And and get create the simplicity through the permitting department. And that's one of the wonderful things I've seen in the 5 years I've been working on this issue, is how much government has now come to the table and is really looking at these units as an opportunity, and even creating programs to help people build these units. And Marin, was instrumental in that, like the work that we did with the Marin Housing Authority to help develop programs to create these as affordable units and to help people who were already low income create these in their homes to help their homes become more affordable. They really, they kind of got the movement started in other jurisdictions, and I think we'll talk about this a little later, have kind of taken the ball and run with it, and I look forward to talking with that. But junior units offer really the lowest cost opportunity. It is the lowest cost commodity, apologize for the word, but in housing that you can create. ADUs not far, behind. And they just create brilliant opportunities to add additional housing on.
Help pay for your own rent too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And you can either live in the main house or you can live in the junior unit or the ADU, and so it really kind of creates three different types of housing. Junior units are also smaller. I didn't mention that. They can only be up to 500 square feet.
Right.
And they specifically have to incorporate a bedroom. And that is important because all of the utilities, all of the road use, everything that's associated with the usage of your home, yeah, exactly, is determined by the number of bedrooms. So if you turn a bedroom, and just know it can be a bedroom or bedrooms and ancillary spaces up to 500 square feet. And 500 square feet, that's 1/4 bigger than a 2-car garage. That's a very significant size living space, right? Easily, accommodating.
If you don't have any dogs.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, or maybe even if you do, depending. So it creates three very different economic price points for housing, right? Junior units being the most affordable, ADUs being next, right? Being bigger and now because of the state laws can be up to 1,200 square feet. But some jurisdictions have them limited to more like 800 or 1,000. But anyway, and then the main living space area. So it's really like a kind of a diversity of housing, the possibility of a diversity of housing, and on every single family lot.
So looking at ADUs and JADUs as a solution to just kind of putting more supply into the market to alleviate demand. First of all, is that going to alleviate demand and lower the prices of homes and make it more affordable for the average population? Or is it just going to, or are more people from other areas just going to migrate inward and the prices are going to remain the same?
Well, I mean,
what are your thoughts on that?
Simple supply and demand, the more housing,
and we agree.
Yeah, right. But with that said, these junior units and ADUs tend to be naturally more affordable. And this is, of course, assuming that, there's a homeowner on the property or, maybe not. But basically a homeowner has their own economic interests in mind. And so they just have to meet, they have to accommodate their own economic needs. And so they're, if they've been nursing a mortgage for, 30 years and they're, 20 years down on it, they'll rent it out in accordance with their needs, right? That's not necessarily maximizing the market. And like most people don't even really know, what the market is out there. So homeowners are interested in meeting their own financial needs. And they care most about, living with somebody who is going to be their new neighbor, their new friend, right? Their community. And so that is as important in the equation as anything else. So, yeah.
And so looking at converting existing homes into multiple units, that is one solution to put more supply in the market.
Yes, it is.
Another solution is to expand outward, more development, increase density. What are your thoughts on that in relation to sustainability in the long term? Because our economy demands jobs, and jobs are threatened when we don't have enough housing. So
the price point on redeveloping what is already existing is so much more appealing than building new.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And what many people don't know is we are chronically overhoused and in the middle of a housing crisis. So here's a statistic I just love. In Marin specifically, and Marin actually stands out as the leader in this in California, but the other jurisdictions aren't far behind. 63% of the homes in Marin County are occupied by only one or two people, in most cases, a couple sleeping in a single bedroom. So
it's an aging population.
Right. And so we have a lot of spare space in our homes. And yet, where do you downsize to? Where do you, give up your tax base and move to? So redeveloping existing homes to kind of facilitate downsizing and also developing homes to house, again, a changing society is an amazing opportunity. And even if you build a brand new cottage home, right? So we're still talking new on a single family property, because you take the land costs out of the equation, you can build housing for a price point that you will not see anywhere else, not if you have to incorporate the land costs into your development. So let's say you build an ADU, and it's not inexpensive. I mean, you're looking at $200,000 to $400,000. But where in Marin County can you build a home of possibly up to 1,200 square feet for anything less than $500,000?
You can't.
Yeah, you can't. So not only would you instantly recognize the value of that in your property values, but you would also have an endless stream of secure income. And I always point people to this Wall Street Journal article that was written, and it talks about how in-law apartments are the hottest commodity in real estate. We are moving back to a multi-generational family model, housing model, and but it has a 21st century overlay, right, with unrelated groups of people sharing properties. But the article says that having one of these units in your home can increase your property values up to 60% compared to a similar home that doesn't have one. Now, I'm guessing that is the ticket price of a cottage home slapped onto the value of already in your home. And so that was all based on a Zillow study, and I think that's a pretty staggering statistic. So you are actually increasing your property values by building additional housing.
Absolutely.
But now looking at building, the biggest thing we found going to city council meetings and hearing people in the community, how have second units, or I guess we don't call them second units anymore, but, ADUs, JDUs, how have they been received by the community? Are people, do they want them, or is there a whole group of people that are totally against them and go to every single meeting? And what's the reception of them?
No, actually, it was amazing. I mean, I was on an amazing journey. I mean, so not only we started passing local permitting code around these junior units, and we ultimately went on to pass state law. And I was having a lot of fun because I was literally passing code and law overwhelmingly, with overwhelming support, and all those people in the red shirts, the NIMBYs, right? We were like, yeah, why can't we do that? Why can't we do junior units? Why can't we do ADUs? And so when you're looking at ADUs and junior units as opposed to large-scale, low-income housing, everybody's completely on board. Literally, there was a while it was we were just getting unanimous support. It was so much fun. And but with that said, now that the state laws have passed and everything, when people are trying to build, I mean, sure, there are some neighbors who are trying to push back. They don't necessarily want, a new, structure on that property, but because of the new state laws, they no longer have a voice in that.
That's big.
And what state laws are those?
It's the state laws that came at the end of 2016. The North Bay Council was behind. Oh my God, I used to have all of these. The numbers of the bills under my belt. But anyway, they passed sweeping legislation around accessory dwelling units. Right. And they made it so it was a ministerial process. They got rid of, in many instances, they got rid of the requirement for additional parking, right? So if you built an ADU anywhere within an existing permitted structure on the property, no parking. If you were within a half mile from public transit, no parking. If you were in a historic district, no parking. I mean, and that parking issue was big, right? They made it so that you didn't have to go through design review. Your neighbors no longer had a say, right? You're still, building within your setbacks and everything. It's, the area of your lot that you are allowed to build on, right? So that was an enormous hurdle. I mean,
it's your property. Why shouldn't you be able to?
Yeah. And I mean, we said from where I came into this space 5 years ago to now, we say a minor miracle has happened in California. Not only are you now by right allowed to create an accessory dwelling unit on a single family property, but in many jurisdictions, they are allowing for both an accessory dwelling unit and a junior accessory dwelling unit on the same property. So it's been pretty amazing. But it's not just that. It's the way that permitting departments and government organizations have really gotten on board, and even the utility districts, realizing the value of these units. So it's been incredible.
I'm hearing so many pros and advantages of ADUs and JDUs right now. But, with anything, there's always going to be some kind of con or some kind of, downside of there. But are there any downsides to having, ADUs, JDUs in the community that you found throughout your work?
Well, I mean, I can say that, ADUs and junior units aren't for everyone. I've, heard people say, oh, well, we're getting a little, pushback, in Marin. And it's just there's a complete spectrum. I mean, there are people who are taking advantage of this opportunity because they are financially savvy and smart, and like they're completely, and that's fantastic. There are other people who are creating a lot of security and, and financial freedom by creating these units. And yet there are some people, they're not interested in sharing their home, no matter how much privacy you build in, and they're not interested in sharing their property. And that's fine too,
Absolutely.
right? It's all about choice. It's about choice, choice, choice. And it's about creating housing options, right? I mean, if we want to create a resilient, economically healthy community, right, prepared for the challenges of the 21st century, we better have a diversity of housing, and we better have people who are stable in their housing so that we can go out and focus on the hard work of, making our community thrive.
Right.
So,
And again, the big thing with this is it starts with the homeowners. It goes back to choice, deciding if they want to have these units or not. But just looking at the basic advantages of homeowners, I mean, what does a homeowner gain from having a unit on their home or on
my
their
God,
property?
I mean, I feel like so much. Again, I just keep going back to it increases property values. You have a secure, steady stream of income. You have income or housing when needed, right? Because let's face it, over the course of time that you own a home, your needs change greatly, right? And this is your greatest, most personal investment, and it should be flexible enough to meet your changing needs during the course of time that you own it, right? And so to me, I'm like, we'll talk about ADUs and junior units, but to me, I feel like the larger conversation that should be being had locally and at the state level is about flexible housing, that we should be able to be creative enough in our homes to not only create additional housing, but many, many people are working from homes. More and more people are working from their homes, right? And every home is different. So how a home could be configured to be flexible enough to house people and have people, working out of their homes, right? That right now, like there's a set number of bedrooms and they're in a set number, and they're in specific places. But what if we just had housing where this house it's a 3-bedroom house. That means it's slated for 4 people. And maybe that's, if there is a septic system, that's what the septic system is rated for. Well, what if those 4 people could be living on that property in any configuration, right? And so it's like, yes, you're not allowed to exceed the population of this house based on, the utility, road use, and everything else that goes into organizing, a community. But what that actually looks like is really up to the homeowner themselves, right?
There's a lot of choices.
Right. It's creating choice. It's creating flexibility in our homes because we're living in our homes differently. And instead of building regulation onto regulation, maybe creating flexibility around, how we are occupying our homes is the way to go here. Because let me give you an example. Like somebody says, okay, they have a septic system and they have a 3-bedroom home, but they're, one of those couples that's really only living in a single bedroom. They want to build a cottage home. They don't want to actually share their home. But they can't do that because that would create additional bedrooms and their septic is not set up for that. Well, and I've heard people, and some people will call it, they'll try to do a swap. Well, we're going to swap those bedrooms. Well, what if there's just like a number of people that are allowed on that property and you're not allowed to exceed that number? But if they're out in the cottage or they're in the home, it doesn't really matter. The important thing is the septic system's needs are not being taxed because it is understood that this home is only slated for 4 people. And that way, we don't have to jump through all these hoops and people don't have to pay like crazy figures to have more access to, water or sewer, and therefore not be able to do it per code, and I'm not anti-regulation. I understand that these are protections, but I feel like there needs to be flexibility built into that so that we can redevelop our homes to house, the modern community.
And looking at the housing crisis, it seems like there are two poles. It's mostly seniors and a lot of younger people that can't afford to live in Marin. And looking at these, junior dwelling units, we have changed that name. Find something a bit simpler.
Junior units.
Junior units, and then accessory dwelling units. A lot of people that the seniors need are caretakers, people that are coming in. And Marin has over 60,000 people commuting every day. And I'm sure a big number of those are first responders, caretakers, a whole bunch of essential members of the community, teachers.
Yeah, that's a lot of the pushback that you hear about, people are like, oh my God, that's, it's already, the traffic is already so bad. And housing is the answer to the problems that we have on 101. And I was throwing around that statistic that you just said, Jonathan, like literally a couple times a day. 68,000 people a day commute into Marin County.
Which is what percentage of Marin's workforce?
And when we talk about resilience, 60? Look, when this is California, I don't think I have to tell anybody these days, between fires and earthquakes and everything, this is a state that has emergencies. And when there is an emergency, people have a vested interest in being in the communities where they live. If you want to have a thriving, resilient, durable community, let's hope that your teachers, your nurses, your workforce, your service workers, they're the fabric of the community. Let's hope that they live here, because we're going to need them if there's an emergency. So yes, housing loved ones, caretakers, income, just building community. I think that there's a lot of people that are very, very interested in this model. Again, it's not for everybody. Fine, right? But it creates a tremendous opportunity.
And for renters, just looking at the increased amount of affordable housing that's available, it also increases the supply. So for people who want to live in Marin or come back who've grown up here, all of these extra units are increasing the amount of affordable housing and allowing younger people and more definitely essential members of the community to come back here and stay here.
Again, it's all about choices. And also, if we can actually create affordability, and again, sorry, I tend to harp on junior units, as everybody well knows, but it's like people can actually have they could live in multiple places. Like if you were working in Marin during the week, you could actually 5 days a week, be in one place, right? So you're not adding to the commuter traffic, and then, be in another place on weekends. So it just creating affordable housing.
Like a timeshare of your own.
Yeah, exactly. It's just choice. It's just having choices and affordability around that. And so it just creates freedom, right? To me, it's all about having economic freedom and taking people off the roads, allowing people who are renters to have enough financial freedom to actually have savings, ultimately move their way up to being homeowners if that's what they desire. So again, it's affordability in housing is just absolutely fundamental to healthy communities.
And these units have so many advantages, not only for homeowners but renters, but also for communities. They increase the workforce, they increase the potential amount of customers for businesses, and it's just an amazing thing to have in our community.
Well, I like I said, I think it's just so brilliant that young people young professionals are really speaking to this issue, because I think it's brilliant for communities to have. We want vibrance in our community, right? And that's what young professionals bring to the table. And so it helps to have a diversity of constituents. It's like allowing that support a healthy community. It bolsters our elected officials, right? Yeah. Because you're talking about people who have a lifetime of voting ahead of them, right? And to have that diversity that are needed to have a functioning, a well-functioning.
Young people spend more.
Right. Older homeowners, they have everything, right? They don't need to purchase a lot of things. Young people bring that kind of economic vibrance to the community. They tend to go out, go out and eat, they're more social, they're more in the community. And so it's the community that we all want. And it helps businesses. It's just all around, the way to go. What do you say? There is.
I'm only hearing good things.
Yeah.
And also another big thing is a big scare in California right now is having the government come in and force housing in a lot of areas, especially in Marin County. Looking at these units, the more the units that we create count towards the affordable housing units that are required. And a lot of people don't know that. Do you want to expand on that point a little bit?
It was one of the first things that we established when we were first passing the code in Nevada. That's where junior unit code passed originally. And we established at the state level that they could help count towards regional housing needs assessments and RENA numbers. And so, yes, they actually help to fill our housing requirements, which is fantastic. It's based on there'll be a steady, and there has been a lot of activity around creating these units. So the numbers of permits for creating these units, although I couldn't rattle it off to you, it's gone up considerably. And I think in San Rafael it was like 6 times what it was in previous years. So it's great. So using those consistent numbers to qualify for our affordable units in every housing category. Because there's several. They, again, offer one of the lowest price points. So they're counting in our most affordable categories, which is great. So.
And who sets the RENA allocation number?
That's state. Yeah.
That's state. Okay.
Yeah.
And are we accepting ADUs enough? Or do we need to take it a step further?
We're asking, it brings up a great point because we're asking homeowners to basically take on the job of building our most affordable housing. And if we are going to do that, and if they're going to take on that responsibility and that cost, then we have to build in incentives for them to do that. I think we need to streamline the process. I think there needs to be great predictability around the process, and I think whatever programs that we can create to encourage as much accessory dwelling unit development and junior unit development as possible, it's a benefit to all of us. And so, it's in Marin, especially given our opportunity to build, large-scale housing. It offers a significant option for us. And it's interesting because in Vancouver, Portland is kind of the epicenter of ADUs in the United States, but Vancouver is actually heading the game, if you will, in Canada. And 35% of the homes in Vancouver have an accessory dwelling unit built in. If we were to do that in Marin County, it would be an incredible growth in housing. And that, so if it was 35%, gosh, I'm frustrated because I used to know the number of how many single-family homes there were in Marin. Maybe I can, if we take a break, maybe I can look it up. But anyway, if for every ADU or junior unit that we create, we actually create 2 homes that are more affordable, rather, right? Because it makes the existing home more affordable for its owner. So it's while
at the same time raising the value of the whole property.
Exactly.
And just going through all the advantages, homeowners win with this, renters win, communities, government with the increased numbers of units and the property taxes, but also the planet. More people are not commuting, that's 68,000 every day. More people are closer, they can walk, they can bike. And we're just seeing all these great advantages, but you'd made a great point earlier about how property ownership is one of the key points of being part of a democracy. And I really like that point, if you want to touch upon it again.
Sure. It's just having access to land. I mean, some people would say that land is the basis of all wealth and power, and for individuals to have the access to land ownership and home ownership, it's critically important. It's important for democracy, and right now, I mean, we are seeing kind of a conglomeration of wealth, and that is one of the reasons that I built into the junior unit law that owner occupancy was required, because I wanted to make sure that this opportunity we have to create additional housing and therefore create additional income on single-family properties actually was reserved for individuals, and hopefully individuals who work and participate in specific communities, so that they could qualify for mortgages based on the income from those additional units. So using this opportunity that we have now to build ADUs as a formula to open doors for young people and for others to have and own homes, right, I think is critically important. And that point tends to be a little controversial sometimes. But I just think we don't want to. My concern is that by increasing the opportunity for income with rental units, that we open doors to the investor community coming in, purchasing up blocks of homes, and increasing the cost of homes and making it more difficult for the average individual to own a home. So taking this opportunity to really empower individuals to own homes, to me, it is fundamental to democracy. And so anyway, and through new loans that were created through Fannie Mae, the Home Ready loan, and certain financial institutions are now allowing people to qualify for lines of credit that they can, do a construction project with, or construction mortgages, not only based on the future value of a home, but the future income from one of these rental units. And that's the critical piece of all this, allowing people to qualify for a loan to create a unit based on the future income from that unit. That is the one that's been elusive. It's a bit of a tricky proposition, but there are financial institutions that are definitely they recognize the value in it and the potential in it. And again, it's just really all about opening doors to people owning homes affordably and securely.
Absolutely.
Well, Rachel, thank you for coming in today. This podcast has been amazing, and your wealth of knowledge is it's unbelievable. And we want to go ahead and continue that, ADU movement throughout Marin and maybe throughout the entire state if we can.
I wanted to encourage you all to. I love, again, that you're taking this, you're really exercising your political voices. And the work that I did with LillyPad was pretty instrumental in starting programs in various communities to help homeowners, give the homeowners the assistance they need, not only financially, but through creating programs to help them go through this process, right? Again, we're asking homeowners to create our most affordable housing, right? And it's, even for seasoned professionals like myself, it's challenging. But programs that have been created in the city of Napa and the county of Napa, working with the housing authority in those communities, they have created a streamlined process to not only finance these units with a forgivable loan. In the case of the city of Napa, it's forgiven 5% every year that somebody is housed affordably in that unit. And they are doing construction oversight. They are helping them like create the plans for the unit. They are getting it through the permitting department. In other words, homeowners and government are partnering, and they are providing financing.
What an idea.
Yeah, for
revolutionary.
Yes, and these loans that they're providing the homeowner to do the work actually acts as a pass-through subsidy for the renter. If they can do it in the city of Napa, if they can do it in the county of Napa, they can do it here in Marin. Marin's been instrumental. The Housing Authority, again, was instrumental in starting programs, and they were offering loans. They weren't forgiven, but, loans in some cases, non-interest loans. But we need to incentivize and assist homeowners in going through a complex process. Now, when you get down to the actual scope of work, especially in the case of a junior unit, you're talking about putting in a wet bar, possibly an exterior door, but in many cases, a door and a path to that door already exists in a bedroom, right? And so, the price point on a project could be relatively low. With that said, you still need to design it. You still need to permit it. You still need to find a contractor. It's a construction process. You still need to become a landlord. So if we're going to assist people in making this shift, then I think, we have to look to some of the really progressive programs that counties and cities have set up to help people do this. And I think that's, that's just one of the pieces of this that I'm the most proud of, the programs that we have worked to create, starting in Marin, but now in Napa County. So, yeah.
So in your experience dealing with governing bodies in building ADUs and JDUs,
Yeah.
what specific changes would you propose?
I think if they can streamline the process, again, I think if there was a real sense of, open arms. I used to tell people regularly that, that the environment has changed greatly. I mean, people would never call the permitting department, and say, hey, I've got this space that I've kind of been renting out, or, and I want to make it an ADU. How would I go about that? I mean, that was one of the reasons that I think LillyPad was so instrumental in its time, because, people were so terrified of the permitting department. And I'm like, LillyPad Homes, does that sound threatening to you?
No.
So we were out there myth busting. We were saying, look, call your permitting department. It's like they're not jotting it down on paper. Nobody is going to drive by your house slowly at night. It's just they don't have the bandwidth. They are very interested in getting these units built, and if they are already existing, getting them permitted to make sure that they are, safe and code compliant. And so just changing the atmosphere so that people know that the permitting department is your friend and that you can call them and ask questions, and streamlining that process and creating programs so that people can, easily go through this. And there's like one person at the permitting department to talk to that can answer all of your questions. And you have anonymity and all of that kind of stuff, even if you tell them your address. I mean, we just have to create an ADU-friendly environment. I think that's huge. I also think that people have to incentivize this. We talked about it before. They have to absolutely know the consequences that it will have. It's poor word choice, but what it will mean to their property taxes, right? And if there can be any incentives created around that. I think that if it was similar jurisdiction to jurisdiction, like, so you knew that you were just going to go through one process, then, to make it as the information about what's required as easily as accessible as possible. And also San Mateo County, they did an amazing job creating a website that it's a website all about accessory dwelling units. And they show examples of projects. They show pictures. They tell stories. They give price points on these projects so people understand the costs. Because I can tell you, people do not understand what it costs to build things these days. And that is absolutely, it's all about, when it comes to, it's all about predictability. People need to know what they're getting into. And the more that they are getting into a predictable, simplified, reasonable process, the more they're going to go through the system, and that's important because having a legal unit, it's important. It's important from a safety standpoint. It's important from an investor standpoint, and a renter standpoint. It opens doors to financing. It's key. So. Anyway, so anything that government can do to assist people in visualizing and going through this process is, it's all about information.
So taking lessons from Napa, San Mateo, and creating, a friendship between the city governments, local governments, even the state, to help people build these units is essential. And a big thing my mother always says is knowledge is power. And, if you've always heard that the planning department is, a bunch of mean people and they're never going to help you and they're going to come at 3 a.m. and check out your unit, I mean, they're there to make sure that units are clean, that they're built properly and all this other stuff. And going back to your point, it's about creating relationships with your community and, community governments to get these units built. And in the long run, it will help all of us. And that's a big thing that we have to do here at NextGen.
Yeah, well, I'm excited about your work, and I believe that once people recognize the opportunity that accessory dwelling units and junior units present, you're just going to see more and more of them come up.
Right. Well, Rachel, thank you for coming in today.
It was my pleasure.
And we're all set. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. You can find more of our podcast episodes on our website at nextgenmarin.com. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to stay updated on all things NextGen Marin.